My testimony is something that I have wanted to talk about on here for a while. I grew up with two parents that are really good Christians. They shared their faith with me, and I remember thinking that it was really stupid. I had a lot of pride, and I said, that is obviously false. That can't be true. And I think I'm smarter than you guys. And I lived the first part of my life for a long time thinking that I was smarter than everyone. And I was lazy. I wouldn't help out around the house. I was very resistant to doing any sort of chores. I always did the very minimum in school. I had no study habits. And I could say that I was definitely an atheist up until around the age 13, where I was starting to see things that I couldn't explain away. Because when I was young, I'd kind of just turn my head the other way. But I started to see miracles, and I started to see the power of God. And I didn't really know what to believe at the time, but I knew that everybody had something that I didn't. I kind of said, hey, God, if you're real, I do want to find you. But I never actually looked. So I said that with my mouth, but I never actually looked for God. I can say that my heart was far from God. So at that point, I definitely was conflicted. I was kind of a house, divided against itself, where on one half, I kind of thought I should believe, but I wasn't really sure. I was conflicted for a long time. And I would tell people that I'm a Christian, but I never read my Bible. I tried to read my Bible at one point, but I was mainly doing it for what people thought of me. And so I'm I'm going to read it all the way through. But it was just pulling teeth, because I'm this is so long and it's so boring. This is stupid. I just put it away. And I never touched my Bible again. So after all this, right, so I'm growing up and I am overweight, lazy, and my mom tells me that I need to go play football for my high school. So freshman year, I show up reluctantly to play football, and they put me on the team. They put me at O-line, and they say, do this, do this, do this. And trying to get by with the bare minimum, I was just doing everything, trying not to get noticed, whatever. And I started to get good. And I started to be recognized for my skill and my size and my speed. And I started to enjoy it. And I started trying to get better. And when I started doing that, I started to get really good. And it progressed. And then I found that I loved the hard work, which is something that I had never found before. I had never found the love of hard work. It was always something that was below me, a waste of my time. Nothing was worth my time in my eyes. But then this became something that I was passionate about. Not that I loved football, but I actually ended up falling in love with the work and the improvement to myself. So fast forward to the end of my junior year, and I feel pretty conflicted on what I'm supposed to do with the rest of my life. Because I'm kind of in this weird place. I'm kind of still lazy, but I'm also realizing things that hard work can be a good thing. And I'm trying to think about, what do I do after high school? And I was for sure not going to college at this time. I was no way. And I was thinking, well, maybe, continuing on this path will lead to even greater realization. And so I ended up going to a community college. It's a 2-year college, and the football level is not as high as if you were to go to university. So I go to this, community college. And my freshman year, I was really good. I was one of 2 freshmen that started on the football team there. So I was, out of the freshman class, I was one of the top 2 players. And so I started to build a dream up in my head that I would get a D1 scholarship and be really, really good, maybe go play professional. And then my sophomore year, it all came crashing down. I ended up getting a couple of injuries. They decided that I wasn't doing enough to keep earning that position. So they went ahead and moved me out of the position. And that kind of tore me up, because I thought I was, the best of the best. And they basically told me, hey, you're going to sit the bench until you improve. But I had played my whole first year, so I was very confused, and it was a really hard time. It was really just a humbling experience, because while I still look back and I think that maybe it was silly of them for me to put me on the bench, I do think that I learned a lot from that experience. So my time at the 2-year college ends up being finished, and I really didn't get to play at all my second year. I didn't really have anyone rooting for me to get recruited. I didn't really have anyone looking at me. I was terrible at networking, I didn't really have any options besides a couple of NAIA schools which were interested in having me, which is like the lowest level of university that you can play for. These schools only have like 5,000 people, and so they're really tiny schools. And so I ended up going to this Catholic university out in Kansas. And I went to the school, and I see all around me people that are Christians. And a lot of Catholics, of course, because it's a Catholic university, but also moving from California to Kansas, it was just a culture shock. And you see, it's inside the Bible Belt, and you see all of these believers, and it's very prevalent, especially where I was at, with a lot of young people that are Catholics and are very devout in their faith. And so I started to question my faith. So I started to ask, is Catholicism the more true form of Christianity? And along with that came a lot of doubts too, because I'm thinking about Catholicism and their belief system and questioning their belief system. It also led to me questioning my belief system. And honestly, at this time in my life, I was down pretty bad, and I kind of wanted to reject God altogether. I was a little bit angry that God hadn't, kept me on the path to be a D1 player. And so I was kind of looking to throw away my whole faith. And I think I was moving further from God. So as I'm looking into my faith, I start discovering evidence for the Bible, and I start discovering a lot of things that were fascinating to me. And I started really diving into the intellectual side of Christianity and the rich history that is there, from the time of Jesus. And I kind of just got hooked, and I couldn't stop watching these videos. And I started, buying books, and I started reading again. And I opened up my Bible, and I was looking at these passages that the Catholics were talking about, and it just grew and grew and grew. And at some point, I was just reading a whole book in one day, and then that's all I would do, would get home and read and watch YouTube videos, watch sermons. And I also started diving, deep into the word of the Bible, and there's some powerful stuff in there. I found multiple YouTube channels like Living Waters and Apologia Studios, and a lot of these YouTube channels that have a beautiful way of sharing the gospel. They also have really strong arguments for Jesus. And so I started diving into this stuff, and I was finally fully convinced of it, because for a while I was kind of like, it makes me feel good. It's probably true. I don't really know though. And then I was like, whoa, this is like, it feels like I've been living in this fog, and the fog has been lifted, and I'm reading all these books. And there's these crazy stories that have been around me my whole life, but I never took the time to stop and consider them as actual stories. And when I started to do that, it really shook me that how real God is. And, so this whole time I was like, well, it's something that you can't really know. Like, I'm gonna act like it's real, but like, you can't actually know. And I know that because, there's a lot of people in the world that say God's not real. So if that's the case, then he's, it's not obvious to everyone. So therefore, it's just not obvious in general. So I kind of was just living my life like God was real. I didn't actually have any reasons for that. I was kind of just believing it because that's what I was told was, and it seemed like it was true, but I didn't actually know. And I really at times would have a lot of doubt. And I'm just like, I haven't actually seen anything. It's all just conjecture. Like, I feel like I've seen these miracles, but have I been deceived? What's going on? But when I really started to dive deep into it intellectually and read these stories and look at the evidence, like the manuscript evidence for the resurrection of Jesus, I'm just thinking, wow, this stuff is like really strong. Like one great book that I read was The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel, and he's like the atheist investigative journalist, and he interviews all of these people, and then he comes to Christ through reason. And I'm like, people can come to Christ through reason, which I knew this, but then it started to hit me where it's like, whoa, like this is like real, like you can basically prove this. And I started attending a local church there, reading the scripture in the church and asking questions, and I just grew and grew and grew. And I basically started my spiritual growth, when I was 20, when I could have easily done it when I was 14, when I was kind of like, I think like I want to submit to God, but I didn't give my whole heart. And now I'm just a completely different person. Now I read all the time. I own a bunch of books. I read my Bible every day. And for years, I had this passion for creating YouTube videos, and I created channels for my sister and helped with my brother's channel. And I just kind of loved it. But I would always think, man, I wish I really had something to create a YouTube channel around, because I feel like I would be really good at it. And then this happened to me, and now I realize that I feel called to make a YouTube channel. And now it's a no-brainer that I'm going to make a YouTube channel about God and Jesus. And a lot of it is just me learning about things and then regurgitating that in a video. And so it's just a way for me to grow, and I hope that, somebody else can help learn from it too. And I'm still young. I'm still 20. All of this change of my heart happened only, 8 months ago. And there's going to be a lot more to my testimony in the coming years. And I hope to share that with you guys. So that's my testimony. I hope you guys like that, or anybody gets something out of it. If you disagree with me or you have a comment, go ahead and leave it in the comment section. Leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys around.